Alright, for this video we're going to take a look at how did the government respond to domestic crises. And so here we have Nehru kind of cultivating his nation. First off, let's take a look at women and how they were affected by the partition. It was pretty sad. During partition, thousands of women were killed, raped, abandoned, or forcibly married to their abductors. 75,000 Hindu, Muslim, and Sikh women on both sides were forcibly taken across the border. So a lot of violence on both sides here. India and Pakistan agreed to attempt to return these women to their families. By mid-1948, India had located 12,500 of these women and returned them to their families in Pakistan. But when they get home, it wasn't necessarily a cheery picture. In some cases, they were rejected by the communities upon arrival, because they were raped. They were seen as damaged and just weren't accepted. And in some cases, they would commit suicide out of shame. The policy of repatriation was abandoned by 1954, as a lot of people just didn't want to return out of this fear. And so we have people being carried across the border, families moving across the border. Resettlement of refugees. 75% of Indian workers were in agriculture, so farms were abandoned and new farms needed to be built in this new resettlement. They also had to deal with major disruptions of the patterns of farming, of irrigation systems, where they're going to get their water to the farm, roads to be able to move their goods to market, settlements that are going to be near enough to the farms to sell them to in rural areas. And so India had to find jobs for millions of these refugees resulting from partition. So here we have an abandoned farm where they're going to have to really redevelop that. 6.67 million acres of farmland in West Punjab was abandoned by Hindu and Sikh refugees when Pakistan took over. So there's all this land left over in Pakistan, but when they get to India, it won't necessarily be the same. In Punjab, some of the area, some land, was abandoned by Muslim refugees, and that was going to be used. And the government definitely did help to resettle refugees in areas where they could farm again. And so luckily it helped to balance out in some cases, but not in all. Where the government could help, they would give out loans for seeds and farm equipment to rebuild these new farms. So they'd give them land and get them started. However, only even 75% of the country was agricultural. The remaining 25%, they weren't farmers. They were artisans, and they were good at making things, traders, and industrial workers. 500,000 would move to the capital, Delhi, where they lived in makeshift camps around the city. And later on, the government would help out to build satellite towns to help accommodate the population, so kind of suburbs around the central city. By the 1950s, most had found homes and jobs and had really settled in. And so it worked out a lot better on the Punjab side. The Bengal side did not work out as well. And so 3 million refugees fled from East Pakistan into West Bengal, India. The exodus of Punjab was 2 weeks. Everybody moved very quickly and everybody was resettled pretty quickly. However, Bengal, this exodus was a slow, steady exodus, which was less violent. But in the end, it took a lot longer to resettle into India. And so India had a lot of difficulty finding them all jobs. Most were only skilled as farmers, 75% farmers, but there was very little land to give them in India, especially on the side and the areas around Bengal. Because the people around the areas of Bengal, they really weren't moving as much into now Pakistani territory. And so many became homeless and were living on the streets of Calcutta. And some would build kind of shanty towns, informal settlements on vacant land, building their own houses and roads. So it's not a cheery story as much on this side. Threats posed by political extremists, and it gets a little violent in many cases here. The right-wing Hindu nationalist group, Rashtriya Swayamsevak Sangh, RSS, was opposed to a secular state. They didn't want a separation of church and state. They wanted a Hindu state, a nation for and by Hindus. They were very much anti-Muslim, They saw Muslims as hostile and alien, meaning just really not belonging, an outside element in Indian society. They envisioned India as a nation of and for Hindus. And so they started to form uniformed paramilitary cells. So here they are, marching in the streets, being a little threatening here. They were supported by students, as students tend to be more radical. Yes, I'm looking at you. Refugees, and the urban lower middle class, people that just aren't satisfied with what they see in India. Nehru, however, was very much pro-secular, and he believed that they were responsible for a lot of the violence during partition, so he was not happy with them. They were very much opposed to Gandhi's conciliatory measures toward Muslims, because he was always trying to reach out and bring the Muslims back in and work with them and create a secular nation. So they saw him as a traitor and started to reject Gandhi. And so they took it a step further by assassinating him. 1948, Nathuram Godse, an active supporter of the RSS, but later he does leave the RSS, killed Gandhi for protecting the Muslim community in Delhi. And so many Muslims moved to camps when their homes were taken by Hindu and Sikh refugees. And so all the Hindus and Sikh refugees of Pakistan moved into India, and in many cases they would violently kick out Muslims and take over their homes. And some Muslims, fearing for their lives, would be moved into camps where they could be protected. And Gandhi visited these camps, had meetings with local Hindu, Sikh, and Muslim leaders trying to find a solution. He even planned on visiting Pakistan, hopefully to bring them back. And just him working so much with the Muslims was a step too far for these extremists. And so he was assassinated. As a result, India banned the RSS, arrested all of its leaders, India was really shocked by this. In 1949, the RSS leaders were released after 1 year of investigations, after they decided to, and were really forced to, renounce all forms of violence, and they agreed to restrict their work towards cultural and not political matters. And so they really backed off on violence, really backed off on messing with politics. Public opinion turned against Hindu nationalism for decades, but they do make a comeback in the 1980s. So here is Gandhi's assassin, who is executed about a little while after his trial. And here's Gandhi right kind of during his funeral, right before his cremation. And here they are, they come back, and they're in power now. Hindutva is the promotion of Hindu values and the creation of a state modeled on Hindu culture. And they come back in the 1980s, somewhat less violent. The Bharatiya Janata Party, the BJP, with close ties to the RSS, becomes the leading Hindu nationalist party. And there is anti-Muslim rhetoric in their party, and does spark violence in 1992, when some of these Hindu extremists demolished a mosque in Ayodhya, claiming it was built on a holy Hindu site. 3,000 were killed in a wave of violence back and forth. But as they do hopefully become more nonviolent, they become more powerful. 1998, the Congress Party started to lose power to the BJP. 2004, the Congress Party makes a little comeback, but as of 2014, they win, and they are currently in power. They win the election, and its leader, Narendra Modi, is the current Prime Minister of India. And that's just a little look at how the government responded to domestic crises.